So I want to begin by telling you a story about a 12-year-old boy named Jim Doty who lived in Lancaster, California in 1968. So Jim loved magic, and one morning he woke up and he couldn't find his favorite magic trick, a fake plastic thumb out of which he could make things appear. And it wasn't just a matter of him being able to buy a new thumb. You see, his father was an alcoholic and he was often in and out of work. So Jim, he scrounged together whatever money he could find and he got on his bike and rode across town to this magic shop that he'd heard about. And he walks inside and he sees this older woman behind the counter. She introduces herself as Ruth. And he says, "Hi, my name's Jim. I've lost my fake thumb. I was hoping you could help me find a replacement." And Ruth, she kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, "Honestly, this is my son's store and he's not here right now." And she could tell that Jim was a bit dejected by this, so she asked him a question. "Why do you like magic?" Now, no adult had ever asked Jim a question before, let alone about magic. So he thought for a moment and he said, "I like that I can practice at something and get really good at it. I like that I'm in control. Whether or not the trick works is entirely up to me. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, says, or does." Ruth kind of looked Jim up and down and said, "You know what? I like you, Jim. I like you a lot. I'm only in town for the next 6 weeks, but if you come to the magic shop every day, I promise I'll teach you some real magic. Not the kind that you can buy in a store, but the kind that will allow anything you want to appear. For real. No tricks, no sleight of hand, no fake thumbs. How's that sound to you?" He thought about this. To make anything he wants appear? He was in. So the next day, he arrives at the magic shop. And they sit down together in a back room. And the first trick that Ruth teaches him is she wants him to relax all of his muscles from his head to his toes. She says, "I want you to practice this here and at home every day." So he works on that for 10 days and he comes back and she teaches him the second trick, which is quieting the narrator in your mind by focusing on your breathing. So he works on that for weeks. And then eventually she felt like he had that down, and then she moved on to the third trick, which is replacing that narrator with positive affirmations. Things like, "I am worthy, I am loved, I love myself, I love others, my heart is open." Ruth explained to Jim that every decision you make in your life needs to be made with vulnerability and affirmation. Because if your heart's not open, then you can't do the fourth trick, which is being able to make whatever you want appear. So the final day arrives. And he comes to the magic shop and he sits there and he goes through what she had taught him. He relaxes his muscles from head to toe. He focuses on his breathing. He says his positive affirmations. And then Ruth says, "Jim, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to tell me what you want more than anything in the world." And he thought for a moment and he said, "I want to be a doctor." Now, in 4th grade, Jim had a doctor come to his class and give a presentation, and he was enthralled. And so he asked the doctor after, he said, "How do I become like you?" And he says, "Well, there's a lot of school. You have to go to college and go to med school. But the most important thing is that you have to care about people." Well, at the time, Jim could hardly imagine going to college. I mean, he lived in poverty, and every teacher he had ever had dismissed him as a lost cause. But after these 6 weeks with Ruth, the impossible felt possible. So he said to Ruth, "I want to become a doctor." And then he corrected himself and he said, "I know I'm going to be a doctor." And she said, yes, that's it. You have to know you're going to be a doctor. You have to picture it in your mind. And if you set your intention on this and you imagine it every single day, eventually that intention will become a reality. And I don't want to ruin the story for you too much, but he does become a doctor. In fact, he becomes one of the top neurosurgeons in the United States. And you can read more about his story in his book, Into the Magic Shop. But what we're going to be talking about today is how our imaginations can not only shape our reality, but how it can help us to solve problems, and how our imaginations are one of the most important ingredients for finding a fulfilling life. And to begin, I want to introduce you to someone who uses their imagination all the time to help people. Will you join me in the kitchen?